It is such a pleasure to be here today with you all to talk about measurement. So I'm going to ask first for a show of hands, how many of you have had to change your measurement approach over the past couple of years? Yeah, a lot of hands going up in the room, which makes sense, right? Because if we look back over the past few years, I think in the past, measurement was relatively standard. It used to be that brand marketers typically used marketing mix modeling, or MMM, and direct response advertisers typically turned to things like last touch attribution or conversion lift tests. But today, with consumers shopping both offline and online, and even when they're online, across multiple different touch points, it has become much more nuanced and also much more complex. And then beyond all of the shifts in consumer behavior, we've also seen that privacy and regulatory changes have made a lot of the signals that we as marketers used to rely on much less precise. And so it's difficult now to get an apples to apples comparison of the many media channels, all of which are offering their own unique measurement methods, including Meta. All of that means that if you are relying on just one single measurement solution, you may be either undervaluing or overvaluing a channel, and you might be making decisions that could hamper your business growth. And so with this in mind, Meta worked with industry experts to develop a concept called Measurement 360, which leverages multiple measurement levers and sources all together. And it recognizes, oh, there go my cards. It recognizes that you have to make educated judgment calls between all of those different measurement approaches, each of which has strengths and drawbacks, as demonstrated by this chart that you see, which I think is one of the best illustrations I've seen of today's measurement ecosystem. And so to orient you, if you're looking at the left side, these are the three main measurement methodologies: modeling, experiment, and attribution. And then across are the three key attributes that are most important in measuring any sort of results. That's scope, accuracy, and speed. And then next to each of those in the table, the green circle represents the measurement dimension on which it excels, and then the smaller circles show where it's less ideal. And as you can see, MMM scores really high on scope. It allows you to look at all of your channels in a way that's easy to digest and make broad decisions. But MMM can be less accurate, right, depending on the data that's used, how well it's modeled. And it tends to lack speed and granularity, although we're seeing that with cutting-edge advertisers, they are looking at things like much more frequent readouts, sometimes weekly, and also looking at the channel level versus looking at the digital or social broader buckets. Experiments, that second measurement type, like conversion lift or geolift, they're phenomenally accurate in determining causal impact, but they can be limited to a single channel due to technical constraints. So for example, our conversions API, or CAPI, can be useful in tests like conversion lift to gauge impact, but again, that's a measurement of one channel. And then finally, attribution. Think Meta Ads Manager, Google Analytics, Omniture. These are great for making real-time media decisions on campaigns and readily available on demand, but because these types of models rely on cookies, if you're only using this solution, you won't see the full impact of your media, especially as we move toward a cookieless world. And so all of that is to say there isn't one silver bullet. So finding the right balance using these multiple sources of measurement can give you a more robust picture of your performance. And today, knowing that right balance and the right weighting of each source that you're triangulating can become a real competitive advantage, which is why I'm so happy to be talking this morning with this fantastic panel of experts to talk about best practices. And so we have with us first Katie Hanafy, who's representing the voice of media measurement as head of media strategy and investment for PepsiCo Beverages. We have Amit Sharma, who is providing a brand perspective as Associate VP at Church & Dwight, and Kathleen Olin, who's Senior Manager for Deloitte Consulting LLP and co-author with us at Meta of a white paper titled Measurement 360, an advanced way to think about measurement strategy. So thank you all for joining me today on this fantastic topic. I'm going to start with you, Katie.
Sure.
PepsiCo has been on a measurement journey, I think, over the past few years of transformation. And as the company's approach has changed, can you tell us a little bit more about that journey from pure brand measurement to a more complex and nuanced approach?
Sure, absolutely. So first, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. And you're right, it has been a journey, and it's not easy for a packaged good company because we rely on a lot of data sources to help us fuel that. But at the heart of it, our data strategy is, as you mentioned, the mixed modeling. But what we've done is we've built our own in-house capability, and we've automated, and we're using AI to get smarter and faster. And it does give us a pretty robust picture on what is happening across all of our marketing levers, media obviously being a big key driver there. But it also does then break down to each tactic so we know what is working well. But then on the flip side, we always have to manage, to your point about brands, right? So we love when our consumers love our brands. We love to drive loyalty and love. So we do have to manage building that brand equity. So we still rely on some third-party studies to do that. We do a lot of different studies with Meta when we run our campaigns to make sure that we are driving that brand love across all of our touch points.
Got it. And I think that speaks really well to this idea of triangulating multiple different measurement sources. And so, Kathleen, I'm going to turn to you now because as we think about this idea of 360 measurement or triangulation, you have done a lot of thinking in this space. And so how would you define 360 measurement, and how do you see that working with clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Eva, and thank you, Katie, because for me, when we wrote Measurement 360, right, with Meta, really the whole point here was, this idea that measurement really needs to move into an always-on agile approach, right? No longer are the days where we sort of set up our models and we let them spit something out, and that methodology was going to stay forever and be perfect, right? We really needed to move into this world, and especially with deprecating cookies, with privacy, right? Even where there are cookies and pixels still left with privacy regulations, we really needed to move into this world where we were thinking agilely about our measurement strategy, right? Just like you would think about your brand strategy. So for us, the important piece here really with Measurement 360 is, we need to really give advertisers the tools to always continuously be testing and learning within this measurement framework, right? And one of the things that I see, the best-in-class clients that I work with, they're testing everything, right? When a company like Meta comes to them, even if it's a beta, they want to jump on board because it's better to test and to figure out, how do we use this bit of information to triangulate what we currently have and be a forerunner here, than to wait until this is in market. And sometimes at that point, you're almost further behind, right? Because you didn't get your foot in the door. So this idea of Measurement 360 really is about, test and learn frameworks. It's about agile, learnings and workings together, really across your entire marketing org, right? Not within the silos that I think a lot of us typically work in. And really, it's about that triangulation, that's been spoken about, because we know things are going to continue to change. That's really, I would say, the future of our world. And so when we think about measurement, it's about how do we quickly and agilely learn together? How do we use a lot of the different tools that Eva was speaking about? Even since we wrote this, right, one of the things that we do a lot is work with something called granular marketing mix modeling, which is more towards what Katie was talking about, taking traditional MMM and moving it a little bit more right into the world of the future, getting more tactical with it. But thank you, Eva. Yeah, that's what I would say.
I love that. And so taking that same idea of triangulation, I'm sure everyone would love to hear another example of how that comes to life for a marketer. And so, Amit, I'm going to turn to you now, and if you can share a little bit about how you're thinking at Church & Dwight about this idea of triangulation of Measurement 360 and how it applies to individual brands.
Perfect. Thanks, Eva. It's great to be here, and Church & Dwight being if I'm counting correctly, 176-year-old company. We are evolving, and you recognize our brand Arm & Hammer as well. So when we think about the measurement 360, and as we discussed, Kathleen was mentioning 3 parts, right? So we all know that MMM, you're traditional, you look backward, you look at the channel, you look at media optimization, and then you decide where you're gonna go in for that, right? Then comes the test and learn. We do a ton of test and learn, almost 5, 6, or 7, sometimes 10 a month, to really look at is, okay, we made some hypothesis, we are going to this MMM route, but let's check on the go what happened and how the market is reacting. And with that, we keep finger on the pulse. We all do that, right? You got Google Analytics, you got your own financial data, and this and that. So I think the one example I would like to share, a case study we are very proud that we have done with Meta. And with this case study, what we were looking for is how we can use measurement 360 to connect the top and the bottom of the funnel. So in this case, from MMM, we already knew that, hey, we need to work with Meta, and we are looking at our Arm & laundry detergent. And then we did our best practice from a creative and reach perspective. And then we decided, okay, so we're gonna run this on Facebook and Instagram. It's very, very, very well received. Great work done by my digital strategy team, our brand team, our agency partner, Wavemaker, and of course, Meta team. And once we did this one, and then we collaborated with one of our biggest retailer in the market as well. And what we found out that as this ad was running, we definitely did collaborate with IRA, Circana now, and with ANSA. And what we realized by doing this and looking at the signals we were receiving from the consumer and also translating back into the sales side of it, we got about 5.6%, I can say, if it takes some liberty, lift in the in-store for our 2 of our main product for Arm & Hammer laundry. And since Arm & Hammer is a brand that transfers across different products we have in the market, the impact on the Halo product was close to 10.5%. So great study done with the team, and it was a great example of where we're trying to connect different pieces of measurement to bring it home from a sales perspective as well.
It's so helpful, I think, here's our video. Show them. I'll move on, but I think it's really helpful to see how that comes to life, not only in theory, but also in practice for an individual brand. I think one of the things that's really challenging, though, in all of this is that there is so much data and so much signal and so much noise. So how do you pull out that relevant signal and find the most important data to act on? I'm going to start with you, Katie, on this one.
Sure. So I think you need a robust set of tools, and we've developed a number of tools in-house where we get all core teams together to make those decisions to look at the data across the board. And this is anything from viewability to conversion to completion rates, and then we have those discussions to say, hey, which would we like to pivot on? How do we want to optimize? And then we also look at our third-party studies as well. You mentioned Nielsen and IRI, so we do rely on them as well to make sure that we can get the data in to make those right decisions. But it is overwhelming, right? Like there's a tremendous amount of data out there, and it's hard to make those decisions. But I love the idea of the test and learn, right? So we're always agile, and we're making those decisions in real time, and we learn quickly, and then it makes us smarter for the next round.
Yeah. Amit, what about you?
Well, I think it's the problem of riches, sometimes I call it. A lot of data comes through, and then every time we call it scorecard, but God knows how many scorecards are coming up in my inbox every single day. And it's really becoming hard to consume that and act onto that. I think, as Katie, you were talking about test and learn, definitely that hone into the particular side of it. But as we are looking at it, and since you mentioned AI, actually I asked AI how I can use insights from the data. So the answer, and I asked in a very, very funny way to her, is like, how can I find the needle of the insights on the haystack of the data? And AI came back, and the answer was, you burn the haystack or you use a magnet. I said, that's interesting. Then I start playing in my head, is like, what does it mean in a business setting? So by burning the haystack, I think we all can use AI and machine learning to really cut it down and sometimes going to be a little bit more technical here is that I don't need to know every variable that affect my data. I only need few key causal dependent variable. I can look and AI can help me there. From a magnet perspective, it's always the lens of business objective. What I'm trying to accomplish. What is my MMM is telling me? Why I'm doing this test and learn? What it's going to do? The example I shared in the last one, everybody love a little bit rivalry between mom and dad, right? We know that. That's an insight there. But also at the same time, we also made sure that all that insights coming in, helping us to scale up as well. So we worked with one of the big retailer, and we knew it's successful. We are already working with our second biggest retailer and going to activate the similar kind of tactics with those guys as well. So I think, as you said, it's working really hard and very quick, and really go after one or two things. Otherwise, it's going to be overwhelming for all of us.
I mean, I think that is really interesting in that making sure part of parsing out the value or the importance of different pieces of data is knowing ahead of time what you're measuring. I think the places where I think people get tripped up is when you don't have a very clear sense of what you're trying to understand and uncover, and so you can get lost in the myriad data points. Kathleen, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question, actually.
Sure.
Because one of the things that I think is interesting is we've heard from two marketers from very traditional companies that are transforming, but digital advertisers and digital natives also have to take this into account. Where do you see the differences between the traditional and the digital native advertisers?
Yeah, Eva, you're absolutely right. This approach really, I think, fits perfectly for both more digitally focused natives, but then also obviously, more brand, natives. I think they're very different though, right? And you guys probably already know, right? I'm not gonna say anything that is different from what any of you guys are thinking, right? When we work with clients, most of the time, digital advertisers, they're so used to so much data, and they're so used to trying to get to that one-to-one view, right? Well, I want to know exactly what Eva did yesterday and tomorrow and all the things she did, within the day on Thursday, right? And the problem is when we're thinking about cookie deprecation, when we're thinking about even just privacy, a lot of organizations, you can't look that way in an omni-channel world on how did Eva operate online and offline. We were never honestly all that great about it to begin with. We tried, but there's still, from a digital perspective, there's still kind of this need to try to get that type of granularity. And it's really about starting back at the beginning and saying, what is the business goal and the business objective we're trying to measure? And let's make sure that we're using a testing framework, a measurement framework that not just the CMO or the people within the marketing org really understands. Let's make sure that the CFO is also bought into, right, the conversation that we're having, right? Are they going to believe this work, when we're done? And it's the same thing on the brand side. A lot of brands, you guys are both saying it, right? You're sort of used to not being able to connect that one-to-one. You're not really continuing to strive for that. But sometimes what I find is that clients they can be so used to traditional tools that now there's these really great opportunities for them to actually push past what they have been able to understand and see in the past, right? And they can be a little hesitant. They're like, it took forever to get this approach and this methodology bought off on, right? I don't want to have to go back and explain this to 100 more people, right? So with them, it's more about, hey, let's keep the same approach, but let's test and let's learn and let's really push through this idea of agile measurement and agile measurement strategy on the side so that we can continue to test out these new approaches. It doesn't mean you have to get rid of all your old approaches, right? It means we may be able to learn something really important here that we can take and we can triangulate back into what we have that's tried and true. And so really just pushing brands to say, that's important, and we should go out there and test and learn as much as possible. So it's really a framework to us that hopefully works really across the board, but sometimes people think of it a little differently.
I think the common theme that I'm hearing is that no matter which side of the spectrum you come from, traditional or digital, we all have this opportunity right now where we have to evolve, we have to continue to adapt and be open to trying new ways of getting to the source of truth. With that, I'm going to have a question for all three of you, which is what skill sets do you think that the modern marketer needs given everything that we've just talked about? Katie, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. I think, listen, you need to know the digital landscape and the ecosystem and how your consumer is consuming media. That is, sorry, 1 second, that's a given. So understanding that digital ecosystem and then applying data and insights to make sure you can connect with your consumer is very important, right? The second thing is then your critical thinking. How are you pulling out that insight to make an action or an outcome based on the campaign KPI? Like, you absolutely want to be able to do that. And you have to be able to communicate that. I work in a large organization. We have a lot of key stakeholders. We have a lot of agencies. So being able to communicate that and the rationale why and the learnings and why we're making these decisions is actually critical. So those are probably the three main things that I think are important for for marketers.
Amit, what about you?
Sure, I think I'm going to say almost the same thing you just said in a different flavor.
That's good.
In different flavor, I think the first thing for the marketer in our organization is have the strategic hat on, understand what your business is looking for, as you said, what the business objective is, and start there and use these. It's a very simple framework. Like, this is nothing new when I think about it. But I think the magic, the trick is connecting the dots. And for that, it's required a lot more creativity into that as well, and also required to understand that digital landscape, because a lot of signals we pick up, as I said, from digital activities our consumers are doing, and they are doing offline and online together. And the concept, I think McKinsey just came out after the COVID, was physical. I heard that was like physical and digital together. And this is not going away. Last but not the least is the creativity of the marketer. I think that's the last, sometimes I call it the competitive advantage we have as a marketer, that I can be really good creative, and then I can leverage the media to reach to the consumer where they are and what they want.
Yeah, I love that. I think when we talk about measurement and business results, we don't always think about the creativity and the imagination that's required to be able to do this kind of work. And so I love that you pointed that out. Kathleen.
You guys hit it on the head, right? I mean, the only thing I would say is, look, like, this is not easy, right? Like, this is difficult, and I would say, especially as I see most of our clients, look, like, CMOs have been under pressure, and they are continuing to be under even more pressure, right? And so that business acumen piece, right, it's telling the story, it's understanding digital media, right? You really have to understand that, but it's really, at the end of the day, it is connecting the work that we're all doing back to a business, right, a bottom line, and making sure that everyone can speak that same language. Because, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but acronyms are ridiculous within digital, within marketing, and for sure at a consultancy. And all we ever talk about is everything within acronyms. But if you can't sit in a room and have your CFO and your CEO understand what the heck it is that you're driving for your business, then you're probably not doing things right. So I would say you guys hit the nail on the head.
So creativity, but maybe not in the number of acronyms that we're using.
Yes.
Okay, got it. I think we all would love to be able to see into the future. I don't think that we can, but I'm going to ask, where do you see measurement going? Kathleen, I'm going to start with you this time.
Love it. Wonderful. Thank you. For me, I mean, again, I talked about a lot about agile learning, right? AI obviously is something that, I mean, I can't stop seeing every single email in my inbox, especially in consulting, about AI and machine learning and what is that doing with the future, right? I think, as we've all heard, right, the amount of data that there is right now that we are all trying to harness, that we're all trying to learn something from, is enormous. For me, AI and machine learning is really where, it's really, that is where that comes in, right? Helping us harness all this data, helping us use it in a more effective, efficient way. at the end of the day, and speed, right? But at the end of the day, you still need a person sitting there like in front of that data to say, does this make sense, right? And what is the insight, right? I talk a lot about the differences of a data scientist and an analytics person, right, in my head, right? You still need someone to make sense of that data, and then you still need somebody to tell the story. It's that storytelling, right? So when I think about the future, I think we're going to have more and more data thrown at us. I think we're going to have more and more different methodologies to test and learn and challenge us. I think we're going to get smarter. But I think we're going to still always have to have people there who can take that information, turn it into a brilliant insight that then focuses and pushes the business further, focuses the content and pushes that further. But I think y'all are still going to have jobs. I don't know. Don't hold me to that.
No, but I think that's right, and it goes back to this last question that we talked about in terms of the skill sets people needs. Yeah. AI may transform the way that we have to do our jobs and the types of skills, but we still need people involved. I mean, anything that you would add to that about where marketing and measurement is going?
Well, I wish I knew, but I guess what you said is exactly, as a real life practitioner, I think AI has solved a lot of back-end stuff. For me personally, it can help me look through a ton of data. It can synthesize that very quickly. I can consume it very fast, and literally with one-party data, I can also think about how I can monetize that as well to really reach to the consumer where they want me to reach. So it's becoming very powerful in that sense. Yeah. I don't think so AI is going to take my job. I'm a very creative person, and I don't think so AI is going to be that creative. We'll see.
Katie, anything that you would add?
Yeah, I mean, I love all of those builds, and I do think that it's still going to be very fragmented and complex across the landscape. And as new technology comes about, and as partners get more sophisticated, especially in the traditional space, I think it's just always going to be a challenge, and we're always going to have to test and learn. And it starts upstream at the beginning. What are you trying to achieve, and how are you going to try to achieve it? And I do think, with all AI and data, and we've been doing a tremendous amount of testing and learning, and that's not perfect. And in order to win people's hearts, you need to have that creativity. You need to have people who understand people, who can drive that emotion, that emotional connection to our brands, because that's what's going to happen when they need to make that purchase at the moment of truth. It's not going to always be how you're measuring it. So I think it's the balancing act of making sure you have the data, using the data, but then, of course, having that human aspect to make sure that we can, reach our consumers, because that's ultimately what we need to do to drive our business.
Well, thank you all so much. I think if I were to synthesize what we just talked about, I think there are a few themes that really come out when we think about this concept of 360 measurement and triangulating all of the data. I think the first is this idea of agility. There's so much coming at us, we have to continue to be able to synthesize data quickly. I think also the idea of being open to learning, right? We are constantly testing, learning. There's new data sources, new signals, and changes happening every day, both with consumers and with the overall ecosystem. So we have to be able to adapt. And then this idea that everything needs to come back to business objectives, and we have to be creative in how we're using data and interpreting data and being open to finding new ways to use that data to tell stories in ways that resonate with the people who are helping to make decisions and approving the strategies that we're putting forward. So I want to thank you so much. I also have to say, this is obviously a conversation about measurement, and so therefore, we would love to get feedback. If you would take just a minute and use the QR code to share your feedback about this session, that would be incredibly helpful. Thank you all for joining us, and thanks again.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.